Good
I
morning,
may have,
everybody. Yeah.
I may have to interrupt the call. I'm expecting a call from a plumber. I have a hot water heater leak.
Oh, okay. Well, good morning, everyone. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnani.
bringing you this week's Ascended World Collective Energy Share. So, let's see. God, it's so weird to think we just had Share Friday night. It feels like that was
Right.
like a year ago already.
Yeah.
Um, so
I
we
feel like
did
there may be
more.
something to
What
go
was
ahead.
that?
I was going to say, I feel like there may be something from Friday night to share here. Um, Refinements anchoring in, you know.
Right, right. And the space we keep on holding, and what we're doing is been so powerful, um, because it's opening us up and really clearing out the crumbs, Like, so last week we were talking about I don't even remember. I
You know,
have
I
to
was
go.
reviewing that. I was reviewing that before we got on, and I read allow complete acceptance externally as well as internally. And complete acceptance of what's going on external to allow everything to adjust and trust its creative flow forward.
Right.
So I guess I thought that was all that I needed to write.
Well, I think that's more than what I wrote in my my book because I'm looking for it. So I don't think I wrote anything interesting. Um, and Friday, what we talked about. So we had an energy share Friday night online and in person, and we were talking about Sarah and I had another share on Thursday that was sort of impromptu because there was some vague anxiety that was building. So we were looking at that at a collective level, right? And we were talking about this holding a space of that there are many of us who are here as we've been coming online to really hold this new vibration or a different vibration entirely than what we've held here before, to allow the old paradigms to crumble, and the old institutions, the old structures, and everything else. And so that's part of been what we've been guided to do over the past, whatever, several months between, expectations and something else. And I just can't think of it.
Releasing the laws of nature.
Yeah, the laws of nature, like being able to accept a whole new level of, the elements, as the elements. I'm trying to remember, it was,
Releasing judgment.
yeah, judgment. That was the other one. Yeah. And judgment's a big thing. And, Sarah wrote a blog that we posted last week on the Trinity Energy Progression site about judging and how much it goes into the minutia of everything we do and every day is this internal like gauge of judgment. Like, is this the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? If I do this, this is right. If I don't do this, this is wrong. That's all judgment. So this is all recapping what we were talking about on Friday. So we just did more expansion on that. It was really powerful and simple energy that was like this whole new level of activation, remembering within us, right?
Right.
Um, and when we got off and then we did the group vortex here, it was incredible. It was like this whole new level of expansion.
Well,
And
I really think that until we embrace and embody the releasing the judgment and understanding that the laws of nature were to hold us where we are and we don't need those anymore, and all until we do that, we're held at a certain quantity of who we are and what we can access. And once we release that, the sky's the, well, not even the sky, infinity. It just, that's when we truly step into our power.
Right.
And that's when we get that full understanding of the bigger picture in a minute to minute basis.
Yeah. Even if we don't have the conscious understanding of it, it's the trust, right? Like, so
Right.
it was because we have so much judgments on so many things. And that's what the vague anxiety was that was coming up, because it's like, well, if we just were here to be, right? Which is so funny because how much have we focused on that being? And the being entailed holding ourselves at a particular level of vibration, then um we'd have to be comfortable. It's, well, then it's important for us to be, well, pretty much vital for us to be comfortable holding that vibration regardless of what that function looks like in the 3D, right? So like for example, like we were talking about the being the ripple in the pond, and everything that we do is related to all these things that we might not see the connection to at this level of consciousness. But um what help me out here. It was like this. Oh, but the other stuff that would come up, like the Notre Dame thing the other week and things
Right.
like that, is like, okay, can you look at that and say, because the mind wants to say, oh, there's no way I was related to that, right? But yet it was really funny that that all happened time-wise around the same time, right after we had done with
Right.
what
Right.
we're working on. And so it's like, well, what if it was? What if it was our fault, right? What if
Right.
it was, or just like, and it's not just us, because there's so many people holding the same space all over, and that's part of what we're all here to do as we come online more, especially those of us in the front end of the bell curve. And so, which is really coming into mass consciousness like pretty quickly. But the thing is for us to get past the judgment of, oh, well, if I do this, I don't know what it's going to look like. It could cause, an earthquake, or it could cause this what we consider a catastrophe, or it can
Right.
cause all this kind of stuff. So it's really important for us to be in that place of non-judgment and acceptance, to say, well, it's all perfect from the bigger picture because this is what we planned, right? This is what
Right. Right.
is going
Whether
to
we
help
remember
us,
it or not.
right? And it's going to help us as long as we do this from a place of true guidance and from unconditional love, and that, like, and having that, keep on thinking, that muscle trained and flexed, to be able to listen and understand the guidance without even having to know all the details.
Right. I've been practicing, they always say hindsight's 2020. So, for example, when we were driving back from South Carolina, was that last week or the week before? I don't even remember. It was the week before. And we kept being delayed and delayed, and I was frustrated with my phone. The cell service wasn't good. I was trying to find a Starbucks because Frank needed coffee to wake up, and we just needed to get out of the car and move around. But it was pouring rain, and we would get off, and I would go, no, that's the wrong one. So we'd get back on, and then it turned out, no, that was the right one. And so, but we just kept going, and when I look back at that, I see the frustration because I had an agenda. But then I look at it and say, oh, had we stopped, we would have been behind this massive wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost like you have to trust in that moment. And I'm trying to train myself to look back and show myself, see, there was a higher purpose.
Right.
There was a higher purpose. And so anytime I reach that level of frustration, is to take a deep breath and step back and say, I know there's a higher purpose. I may
Well,
not see it
and
right now.
sometimes we don't ever see it
Right.
at a
Exactly.
conscious level, you know.
Exactly.
And so the thing is to just trust. Like, we always talk about, oh, well, it's the ego that says, I want to make a difference. You are, like, here to be a difference of some sort. You're here to be a piece of the whole pie. So
Right.
even if you're not conscious of what that is, like, it could be one thing.
Right.
And every moment of your life leads up to this one thing. that might even feel like a drop in the bucket for you, but could be a massive ripple effect for everyone. So, I
Right.
mean, and so we're not used to thinking of things that way, right? So, anyway, whatever we did, it was just bringing in power to this completely new level that's just it's very calm, very clear, and it's a matter of us remembering how to utilize it at a very easy, elemental way, elementary way, yeah, or elemental way, whatever. Um, so I don't know, and I could see crumbs. I saw crumbs coming up for me over the weekend.
Right.
I saw a crumb of something that I thought was gone for me, which is the feeling of, now it's funny because I used to have the feeling of being unsupported,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Um, and like it would be like, oh, I'd ask for help, even when like I'd ask for help, and then people would just like, back out. They wouldn't show up. I would pay them, and they wouldn't do what I paid them to do, like, or things like that, or whatever. So what I was feeling over the weekend, and it came up really like a big wave, was this feeling of minimal support. Like, so it's changed, right?
Right.
Um, so that I feel like it's almost like I'm putting in more and they're putting in less, right?
Right.
And I was sort of, yeah, and I don't even know what it was. It was a dream that triggered me, which is funny. And I woke up yesterday morning and I was so triggered by it. And then all day, the whole thing was just all that stuff about feeling like, why. So it had to do like with the attorneys we hired for our house. And then I was like, well, there's several other areas that I'm looking at where I was having the same experience, where I feel like I'm paying for something and I'm getting the minimal support for it.
Right.
Um, like, okay, so why do I feel like I have to be the one that initiates all of this and has to, do this and like whatever? And it's like, well, if I'm asking somebody for help, it's their reflection back to me as to what they represent in totality of like their expertise and stuff, right? So why would I still then have to take it over, even though, or do a majority of the work and stuff? So that was really what was bothering me. I did some meditation on that, on being seen, being heard, understood, supported, served, not in the way of like subservience, right? But served in
Right.
the way of being supported, like being served in the way that I am, like, say, paying somebody to serve, like to serve me or whatever in exchange
Right. Right.
and stuff like that fully. So, how about you?
Um, the things that came up for me over the weekend primarily have to do with our latest diagnosis on the kitten is cat is that transitional cell carcinoma,
Hmm.
which is really rare. And last night I had some really good insights in that with from the perspective of giving you what you need from the perspective of pain in your body represents your body needing more self care, more love, more attention, more um, support from yourself, and then everything's perfect from the place of that is oh, what was it that came to me? Perfect. Everything's perfect,
Hmm.
and that you don't want to say that someone with cancer it's the perfect thing for them, but it's what they've created and what they need
Hmm.
for their journey. And that helped me because I was feeling responsibility and how can I not help her, and why does it have to be this way kind of feeling, and holding that vibration of unconditional truth, love, knowing that it's perfect, and allowing her the opportunity to give her the nourishment she needs. I don't know how that would tie back into. I think it comes from being in that new vibration. because it is such a higher level of looking at everything. It's not just, oh, my cat's sick, I'm sad.
Mm-hmm.
But I see the bigger picture for her. I see the bigger picture for, the whole household coming
Well,
to
it's
that place.
interesting because it's like because of it's a change of you serving other people, right? So it's like the other direction for, you know what I'm saying? Like you're feeling, or other beings, right? Because
Right.
that was your pattern before, was always serving,
Well,
serving,
mine
serving.
too.
Yeah. Serving, 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 sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice for everybody else but yourself,
Right.
right?
Right.
Somehow that's related.
Well,
Mm.
and it was really powerful. I connected with her on a completely different level than I ever have been able to connect, because it came from a place of compassion and understanding for the circumstances, not an agenda of I need to make this better,
Mm-hmm.
because that's judgment.
Yep.
It's perfect the way it is. It's providing her with a message that she needs for herself.
Well, and to give you guys apparently in some way, shape, or form, right?
Exactly, exactly, because it's never an isolated circumstance. It's very much a spider web
Yeah.
network. Yeah,
Interrelated. Yeah.
right.
So how do we tie that in together? Because it feels like there's something there that we haven't really sort of gotten to that anchor point.
Yeah, it does feel like there's something there. I feel like every time I get on these calls, I can't put anything into words.
It's because we're holding that space more and more and using the words less and less.
Yeah, it's like it's all swirling around, but I can't pull it together to into words that make sense. It's coming from that place outside of me, but within me, that encompasses everything, and it's based in unconditional love and unconditional truth,
Well, and acceptance.
right? Which warrants the complete acceptance of it all.
Hmm.
And yeah, that feels so nurturing in a way I don't think I've experienced in a while.
It does. Again, it goes back to, I think, the habits of the habits of having to do, right? The habits of feeling compelled to do versus just being.
Right,
Because, right, sometimes, like, and it goes back to, okay, if we're just here to get to this particular vibration and just hold this space, right?
right,
Then we don't have to do anything. In fact, it's really important for us to just become really anchored in holding that space. So when we just hold the space, like, because in the situations like, yeah, when there's something to do, right, or we believe there's something to do, that's a
right,
judgment. That's a judgment. It's a judgment to say, I have to do something to change this.
right. Maybe this is that place of being that facilitates doing, whether it's understandings, because I feel like those have become for me action, because it changes how things are, which creates movement. Um, being in that place of that complete understanding shifts that allows things to be different, which to me translates to doing something. So me having a better and different understanding of the purpose of my cat's illness.
Right. Because the first thing is like, well, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do?
Well,
Right.
and it was connecting with her in a completely different way that allowed her a different understanding that seemed to change the whole circumstance. So how is that not doing?
Mm-hmm.
I guess because I'm not physically trying something or moving this or changing this or shifting or whatever, but it's almost like the shifting and the changing came as a result of a different understanding or a different
Mm-hmm.
connection,
Mm-hmm.
at which when I was in the moment seemed effortless. And looking back on it now, it's like, wow, that was complicated, but in the moment it was effortless.
Well, the complication is us getting uncomplicated about it, right? It's coming
Or
back
your
to.
mind trying to understand it. And well, how
Mhm.
can that be? So the mind is what's complicating it.
This is
Because
yeah, this is too, no, we can't do it. Like you're missing something. You
it
got
doesn't
to do
work that
something.
way.
Yeah.
It doesn't work
Because
that way.
it's like, what do you do? What are you doing? You got to do something, right? What are you doing?
Mhm. And that, maybe that's how it all works from this place.
And I think that's what I think that's really what I was having my little meltdown about yesterday because there really is nothing that I can do right. Like I'm like I could do this and I could do this because I mean it was about the whole house thing or whatever, and I'm like I should do this and I should call myself and like it's do because it's like the ego kicks in and is like, well, why aren't you doing anything? Because nothing's happening, nothing's
Right,
changed yet.
right,
Do. Obviously, you're not doing enough, or
right.
somebody's not doing enough, right? And that was really sort of the temper tantrum. Um, well, it wasn't too much of a temper tantrum. I was just uneasy and irritated. I guess for me, that's a temper tantrum, which because
Right.
it's even though it was mild. So, and people come back and then they say, well, what do you mean? So if I'm sick, then I don't need to do anything, like if, and part of that has to do with remembering what that's there for. The only thing to do is to be in a place of presence
Right.
and love and nurturing to say, so why is this here? Like, what is
Right.
this?
And which is, again, how I connected with the cat and a different understanding of what's the message in this illness that, the need for a connection to me and a connection to herself in a completely different supportive way. And once I made that connection, I mean, I just saying that I can feel it totally shift and be different.
Mm-hmm.
And you come to a place of greater appreciation and understanding for the message versus what's something I need to fight and something
Mm-hmm.
that's bad, because that comes completely from judgment.
Well, and we've learned time and time again in our we've remembered time and time again,
Right.
and all the things that we do is all we need to do is see the message of the bigger picture and what it is we need to look at that message is conveying. Because once we do that, there's no need for the message anymore, and it just goes.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's a whole different way of being, right? Because we feel
Right.
like, no, I've got to do this and I've got to do this. And what's our knee jerk reaction all the time? Oh, give them this supplement. I mean, even changing
Right.
into herbs and whatever, it's like, oh, we'll give them this supplement and do this instead and do this and do this
It's still
instead of,
externalizing the power.
yes, it does. This is the
Yeah.
next level
Right.
entirely. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because I know, when I think of the physical challenges that I have with just within my household, it's like once I saw that message of it's giving you a message about being a different way.
Hmm.
Just, it was like, how could I have not seen that? How could I have not seen it? Because once that piece falls into place, it's like everything just totally made sense.
Hmm. Yeah. And so the key is for us to remember in any moment where we're having a compulsion to do. And
Right.
it's not, it's really funny because, yeah, I think because I can hear the collective ego going, what are you talking about? Like, we've got to do. Like, because if we don't do, this entire reality implodes on itself
Right.
because it's created out of propulsion and exclusion and separation. And propulsion means do,
Right.
meaning you got to do something.
Right.
And so if we stop doing,
Well, it's
everything
almost
is
like,
implodes.
okay, if you wanna make it a little bit more palatable to the ego, there's egoic doing and heart doing.
Still doing though.
Well, but from the
Yeah.
perspective of shifting your consciousness and understanding really is doing something,
Right.
or allowing the remembrance, receiving the remembrance, which is
It
could
is
be
doing.
construed as doing.
Yes. It changes the doing to allowing, though, which is a completely different,
Right.
allowing the presence, allowing the
But it's still a
consciousness.
verb.
It is, you're right. It is. It's still a doing thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's another level altogether.
Because it's shifted so much for me from a perspective of, my things that I've been seeking for myself. Focus on, narrowing my creative spectrum to what it is that truly brings me joy, other than just being creative and things like that. And it has refined that in a way that I'm not sure I could even put into words, but it just feels so much better. And it gives me a whole different outcome, both in feeling and in what's externally reflected.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. That's true. Um, and we're getting to a place of, and it is a challenging thing for the mind to really grasp right now because it's so new, right?
Right.
Because we have, again, time and time again, have so many layers on what's important, what makes things important, or what makes them worthwhile here, and that is complicated and complex and
Right.
multi-layered and doing and all that kind of stuff. So when we say, well, actually, to go beyond this existence is to get into this, to be in our higher consciousness and to be embodied here while still connected to the higher consciousness. And that's all based on being
Right.
and simplicity, because
Right.
complexity is only made from the level of separation and duality that we've created, right? But that's still an illusion anyhow. So the
Right.
simplicity is the bigger picture stuff, which is
Right.
something we're really not used to. I mean, this is really a different paradigm altogether, right? So, um, it's this complete presence. Oh God, and I'm just having such a hard time finding words because I can see it and I can feel it,
Right. Right.
but
It's like you can say living from the bigger picture in every moment, but that
oh,
really
there's the eye.
that really does not that's not really a how to, because the mind can't get around that.
And when we get to that place and we see the bigger picture, then we do remember that there is doing that we've agreed to do as part of the bigger picture. Um,
Right. But it's almost like that goes on auto.
yes, it's a completely different way of doing because, God, I don't even know what's the words for this. Because it's just, it's it's so beyond everything else that we've been doing, right? Been doing, funny. It's,
Right.
beyond, it's beyond healing, and it's beyond awakening. It's beyond, alchemy. This is like so funny because I have these URLs and they've been top of mind that I got a while ago, and I'm in the middle of redoing my site. And so I was looking at that last week. I mean, I still have these three URLs, and I think they're all going to feed into my site because all this is beyond what we call these things, right? This is
Right.
really being, what we call enlightened and awakened and, ascended is trusting and seeing and living and breathing the big picture
Right.
as divine consciousness, right? Even
Right.
as the I am of the individual, which is still a much higher consciousness than what we have worked from in this, set of dimensions, to a much simpler place on that, because then we do, and the ego wants to, like, kick up and say, well, what's the fun in that? There's, like, there's no challenge, there's no whatever. And it's like, but that means we're almost done with the lessons,
Right.
right?
Right.
And yeah, we enjoyed the epic journey and the challenge and everything else, but now we remember that we enjoy that wholeness and seeing like knowing and trusting that bigger thing so
Right.
much more completely.
Right.
That makes my heart move. That moves my heart when I say that.
Exactly. Yeah. I know I've, and here's a judgment. I've wasted so much time on the things that I need to do to allow me to function comfortably in this human space that I've created. And what I'm feeling is those things need to be put on auto trust to
Auto
where,
trust. I like
yeah,
that.
to where you understand, just like breathing, it's like I don't have to be consumed with taking a breath. I trust that my body will do that. and
Yeah.
and I trust that my stomach knows how to digest food, and I trust that the whole thing. So if I put my all the things that I deem I need, I need to pay my electric bill, I need to pay my internet bill, I need to do all these things. If I put all those on auto trust and understand that I will function and allow those things to happen, then I can then put my attention on the bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and it's only when we can accept without judgment, right? That whole
right.
the
And
bigger
being in
picture.
that place of higher consciousness with an understanding of it's all perfect and it all works
Yep.
in that space. That's certainly a different way than I've ever looked at it.
And when we do that, well, oh my gosh, what I just saw, that's pretty interesting. When we do that, we not only, so it's really funny. It goes back to what I started saying when we were talking about this, I don't know, months ago, about the doing from being versus being from doing, right?
Right, right,
And the doing from being is when we are in that place and commit ourselves to that place of simplicity and consciousness and wholeness of that bigger picture, then we actually can trust, because we're allowed. The reason the trust becomes auto is because we know that by allowing, we allow all the possibilities.
right. So
Like,
of
and we've
course
been
it's perfect.
talking about this. Yeah, and we've been talking about this, but this is the energy of remembering how to do it.
Right,
Be it, to be it, not just do it, not do it, be it, how to be it. And so, and that spans everything. That spans, healing and wellness, well-being, injury, illness, encompasses doing the dishes or, going to the
Laundry,
store, everything.
everything. Right.
Um, and I had one of those days, interestingly, I look back at yesterday now and I had that irritation come up and I didn't really let it, like it was there and I was observing it, but I didn't really let it like propel me, right? And I was just sort of like, okay, well, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do nothing, and I could shift it energetically, and I could just focus on my presence. And then there was like stuff would come up, and it was funny because I did that in my meditation, and then all day I was just sort of like we started out with a list of things that we wanted to do, and then by the time I got through all this, I was like the list is unimportant
Right.
because what's to be done in the bigger picture will be done in the bigger picture.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, and it's not quite so. Anybody listening to this or watching, feel into it versus the words because we're really limited as to what the words are in explaining this. Like I can
Exactly.
see it and feel it so much more clearly than I can explain it right now
Right.
because
Right.
I don't really feel like we have the words for it yet. This is so I'm sure I'm going to ask for them to come. I'm sure it'll come together in some new way. But it sort of takes a bunch of weights off of the lower level functions of doing.
Right. Which then
Like it's
frees the
almost
space up to have the bandwidth for that higher consciousness vision.
yeah. Yeah. And so then what I have is a lot of people then that come to me as they listen to this that we're doing all this stuff and they've been a part of it and then the other podcasts that I do and just the stuff that I've been posting and they're just like, well, what happens when I get to the place where I just don't have like any emotional reactions to things anymore? And like, because then they feel like that's a bad thing, right? That's a judgment right
Right.
there.
Right.
And I'm just like, no, well, that's part of the growth. That's part of the consciousness is to get to this place of, and it's not that you're not having emotion, it's that you are just simply being present in this place of unconditional love neutrality. Like that's sort of what it feels like, this neutrality of unconditional love, but it's like because I can look at everything and be like, okay, so I appreciate this as part of this whole picture thing.
Right.
And you're in that state all the time, and then it's really challenging to take yourself out of it, like because then you take yourself into doing, because that's the habit, the really deep
Right.
ingrained habits, right?
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, so the habit is that we get, like we were talking about like several weeks ago, is the getting pulled out of the being into chaos again, right? It like, and keeping
Right.
our focus on the bigger picture, being the calm in the storm and all that. And I know people who are very good at that, who've had their world shaken up in the past like month or two because it's almost like they're testing themselves, right? They're
Right.
like, they're doing great. And then the one thing, that precious thing came up, right?
Right.
And then it was like, oh, well, but that. And so they manifested that because it was like they had to get themselves to a place of, I can be in this place even for this, like,
Right.
as and accept this as part of the bigger picture, even though the ego is mourning or grieving or angry or whatever. I can start to step away and just observe.
Right.
Yeah, it's powerful. And that's just still like just a tiny little piece of the whole iceberg of
I
it.
know. I know. Well, it's just a tiny little corner of the multiverse.
Right. Right. And it's a completely different, I want to call it, for lack of a better word, a completely different like propulsion because
Right.
you don't get propelled anymore. You're just
Yeah,
being
but there is such movement within it.
so much because you're not in lack of anything. You're in wholeness. And
Right.
so you
It's
can
almost
do
like
anything and
right.
you can just,
And it's not only is it remembering, it's rediscovering.
yeah. Yep.
which that pulls in rediscovering that the power that's always been there. Oh, that feels good.
Yeah, it does. So, I feel like that this is really our point today. And so the point would be to focus on, in our energy share part, on allowing that remembrance, allowing ourselves to remember how to focus on that in that way, in our
Right,
consciousness in that way, to have conscious realization, understanding, and trust, the auto trust, right, of this level of remembrance over all the doing, all the, propulsion, all the lack, into a much more, oh, there's a big yawn, into a much more efficient, full, yeah, way
being.
of being, yeah, which sounds so vanilla versus what I'm feeling in the
I know,
saturation and lusciousness of this whole
I
thing,
know, I know.
And I'm like, oh, that sounds so vanilla. That sounds so like nothing wrong with vanilla, but it just sounds so like. But the thing is, it is very simple. The
Right,
higher we go in consciousness, the more simple and whole it becomes.
right.
So easy and so easy. Yeah. So let's do that for whatever we need, so that we have like conscious clarity on how to do that and be that and
Right.
exist from that and what that looks like. And let's just add in some words in description if we can see them.
Right. Right.
And this is where the light language starts coming in, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
All right. that was amazing.
It was so expansive.
It was, and all I remember seeing, because I know I saw a bunch of things, and this is what's been going on lately, is I'll see a bunch of things out there, and the second I come back, I'm like, don't know what that was. But the only thing I remember was there was like this whole thing of like almost like a checklist, and it was like check, 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 like doing this just sort of cleared out the whole board, and I was like,
Right.
oh,
Yeah.
it was just so nice.
Yeah. I felt like I had a view of things that I don't think I've ever had. It expanded understanding, vision, everything to a place that I don't think I've ever imagined.
So
That
peaceful. It was
was,
just,
yeah.
it was incredible. Yeah.
So full of gratitude.
hmm
Yeah.
And it was funny because I heard some noise while I was out there that was here, and it felt like it was so far away. Like, and I was like, wow. And I was observing it, like feeling like it was so far away. Like, it's almost like that's just like a little tiny blip there, like out
Right.
there in
Right.
the multiverse. That was so interesting. And yet every blip creates the ripples to create the other things, which it was
Right.
just so
Yeah.
whole.
I did see ripples start to head out, and it's like, okay, buckle up.
Buckle up. Oh, yeah, this is awesome. This is like really going into some really new
I think
territory.
so. I think so. Yeah, I feel like I should write all this down. So later in
Yeah,
the week, what did we do on Monday?
yeah, right. I'm gonna write this down right now, actually. Where's MBN? And it's funny because I was looking at this. It's like we do have the capacity, or it's not the capacity. It's the moment of creating an entirely new dialogue, um, vocabulary.
Right.
Except the challenge is, I look at, I was seeing something out there over the weekend. Somebody posted something, and, some other person posted something, and I see all this stuff about like this photon this, and, this level, like, this level energy, washing in and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, and this is just as foreign of a language as anything else. It's like, it's still not really accurate because it's really we're still limiting ourselves to trying to describe via words.
Right. Right. Which is so flat.
Yeah.
It really is.
And when the sound that the word makes is just a tiny little piece of what that frequency, it
Right.
represents. Ooh, so this is another thing for us to look at this week too, is being able to remember how to communicate by frequency alone.
Right. Because that it's a connection at a whole different level. And maybe
Yeah.
it's the connection from that higher place.
Which we do a lot of, but it's like, well, it's almost like this needs to become our primary method. Um,
Right. Right.
versus secondary. Yeah, that's really powerful. Yeah, conscious clarity on that. That's what's going to be part of my meditation today.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll just see how this week goes because this is like an entirely new plane.
Yeah. Yeah. feels so inviting and exciting.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for everybody. Thanks to everyone who joins us live and out of time and space. And we'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evaniani.
signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a good one.